So anyway, it is chapter 2 of our textbook. I will send you the textbook after the class, right? Somewhere afternoon. So actually, chapter 1, 2, and 3, the beginning chapter of the textbook, is actually, we can say that really the backbone of our course here. So a lot of ideas you are actually studying, but I think chapter 1, 2, and 3 is really the core part of this study, so please read carefully. We are going to talk about the corporate social responsibility, as we see. So what is the meaning of corporate social responsibility and how the meaning of this one evolved? And also, on the other hand, what is the meaning of corporate citizenship? How the citizenship of corporation differ from corporate social responsibility conceptually? Basically, technically, those terminology are pretty much like interplaying each other. Very similar concept, but academically, somebody just tried to differentiate the meaning. Something is more comprehensive than the other. So we are going to talk about that one, and also what's the performance of corporate social responsibility, right? Whatever your behavior in ethical way or responsible way, your performance should be positive and should generate net result, positive way. So we are going to talk about then what is the performance of corporate social responsibility. So a lot of like conceptualization of the core concept, which we'll be keep discussing for the rest of the semester. So very important when you have to study more and more chapter afterward. So I just tried to use some of the hypothetical example here. I think this is already a very classic example that we used very widely. Let's say that there's a professor, very world-renowned professor, very famous. As you see here, especially this day, the requirement for professor or researchers are very tough, right? I'm a professor here, and also other professors at University of Hanyang and also other university require a lot of things, especially in research and publication. So like without producing good paper, good theory, good arguments, actually simply say the professors may simply damage their reputation, also very little reward for their poor achievements. So that's why a lot of professors actually spend days and nights for studying, writing, arguing something. So so some very good professor achieve remarkable things in his or her academic career. So produce a lot of achievements. So let's say that this horizontal axis is like performance of the professor, like research, findings, publication, and so on. And as you see, like this day, just like people in the corporate sector, when professor produce more good research, actually they receive more financial reward. That's the fact, actually, these days. So a lot of professors actually working very hard. So very good professor, famous professor, tend to be kind of very rich, right? Not me, right? On the other hand, the horizontal axis is what we call a donation. You see a lot of Hanyang professors actually donate a lot for university or for poor community. All of I think the DIS professor or just IS professors actually donate. I'm not going to tell you how much and where, but actually all of the professor faculties here donate. So let's say that I'm just talking about some private things. So anyway, the horizontal axis is what I call a donation. So a professor here actually determined to donate, say, right, $100,000 in Korean, right, for donation for students, which is quite good things to do, right? Huge money for donating this amount. The professor is not actually a businessman, not entrepreneur, so donating that amount of money in cash on the table would be pretty kind of a big event anyway. So the concern for this professor is actually how he donate. He already determined to donate that amount of money, but the question is how he donate. That is the question. What we need to concern about here is that sometimes your donation of this money may even damage your reputation or career sometimes. I mean, this is the hypothetical case, but in practice, who knows, that may happen. Let's say that he or she donate that money for the university. Is good or bad? Good. But again, who knows? If he donate that cash to a university as a scholarship, then a lot of students, especially poor students, may be very happy, right? Because he or she may get scholarship. But sometimes this professor may receive some criticism of what? Like where he get that money, right? The professor's salary is quite limited. We are not really the entrepreneurs, so that amount of money in cash is very huge. So somebody may suspect that, is he hiding something, or is he running his own private business other than his academic job, and so on. So a lot of suspicions may go around. So that donation may damage his reputation. So this is a 0 here. Simply, he donate that money as a lump sum money to a university. Probably he may be here, right? Donating that money never gave him a very positive academic performance. So this is positive, right? This is negative, right? But at the same time, he never received a very good feedback upon this donation. So nothing he actually get out of that big amount of donation. So this is plan, like case A of donating this money. While some other professors actually, like case B here, study very hard, raise a lot of funds, receive a lot of research funds from the academic various institutions, and made a very good job and made a lot of money, but never donate any penny to university. Then probably that professor may be located somewhere here. In terms of his academic performance would be very positive. However, he never donates some amount of money to public, what I call a university. So his ethical behavior would be kind of a negative area here, right? So from the university perspective, his good performance probably giving a big contribution to raise the ranking of the Hanyang University. But however, students or public of the students of Hanyang never receive any, right? So probably he may be located somewhere here. What about here? Like Professor C case here. So he, very good-hearted professor here, found a lot of poor students, less educated neighborhood. So what he tried to do was donate that money and helping out those poor and less educated neighborhoods. Right? So in that sense, his donating behavior is pretty much positive here, which is very good. However, because of his or her enthusiasm for social behavior, he couldn't spend his time for doing research, writing, teaching, and so on. So his academic performance is quite poor. Right? So this professor may be located here. Is it good or bad? Just the case, right? Just put yourself under the case of these professors. Just try to locate what is your favorite hypothesis? What is your favorite cases? What about case here? Professor D. This professor, position D here, tried to donate that money to university, but in very different way. Rather than putting that lump sum money to the bank account of Hanyang, what he did was that he hired a student as his or her assistant, like what you call jogyo, right? And use this money for jogyo's assistant student's salary and let him help his research or her research for a specific time period. So that's the way he tried to donate that money to the university. So this is the case of D here. So in your opinion, which one is the best way of donating that money? C? C. So C case, yes, your like behavior, social behavior was pretty much positive. However, your research performance quite poor. So is it good? So I just hang around everywhere teaching poor kid and so on, but cannot really doing much of my research, reading, writing, teaching and so on. Is it really good for me, you, and university? What about, this is the hypothetical case. I mean, all of here is about like how to spend that money for scholarship. But the question is, again, rather than using this money for lump sum cash to university, you have to use this one wisely. What is recommended is put yourself in case D here. So in this case, you help a very poor student by hiring him or her as your assistant, right? So you give this money to your assistant salary, which is kind of a donation, right? So by receiving that donation, the assistant student may earn relieve some financial burden, difficulty, but at the same time, by being assistant student here, he or she would be able to learn how to research, right? He or she is able to make money, but at the same time, he or she is able to learn how to do research, publish, and so on by helping professor. From the professor's point of view, of course, by hiring him, his research, teaching, lecturing things, and so on would be much more convenient because this student is helping him, right? Which is good, again, right? So if he or she, the professor here, used the donation like this, then it is more like win-win. The poor students would be able to earn financial burden, relieve the financial problem, but at the same time, the researcher, at the same time, the student can learn research skill and so on. Again, from the professor's side here, he would be very happy by donating that money, but at the same time, he get help from this research student. So his performance would be getting better and better. And that better performance would be creating another chance to donate another money, right? So it is more like here, kind of a creating win-win condition for both of them on a continual basis. So we are going to talk about here, like, this is just the example of the hypothetical example. But in real cases, like a lot of companies actually, this day conduct a lot of CSR activity, but some firms, by doing that CSR activity, actually create more earning, positive financial gain, but some other firms actually simply losing their money and without getting any positive effect from that social good behavior. So the point is that your behavior in good way not only help society, but also it should help yourself. So the donor and the recipient, both of them should earn some benefit. That's actually the concept of social behavior. So a lot of real cases, by having wrong concept of CSR and by conducting wrong CSR activity, companies simply losing money and won't get nothing, right? Like case A here, I know some of the Italian Korean fashion brand, I cannot tell the name, but that Korean fashion company, the shoemaker actually, tried to create like image of like Italian shoe, right? Shoemaker. So what the company tried to do was that financially help Italian events in Korea. A lot of like Italian events like food, fashion, festival, whatever. By sponsoring or helping that event, the company tried to improve the firm's image recognition, tried to increase like customer base and so on. But because of that behavior, consumer thought that, wow, that company tried to deceive or cheat customers by pretending it like Italian firms. So that sponsoring or donating money for that Italian event actually damaged the company's sales and revenue, which is the case of CSR activity actually turned out to be the negative effect to the firms. That happened quite a lot this day even. So that's why a lot of firms recognize that like doing good things, social behavior is necessary, but they just don't know how to do it. How they would be able to create like win-win CSR activity. They contribute in community as well as at the same time they try to earn more extra financial gain from out of that activity. And some firm here, for instance, the company here make a lot of money by providing good service and product, but never conducted a CSR activity in very systematic and smart way. Simply donating money for, say, national campaign, helping poor kid, and so on. That's it, right? That donation or good behavior, nothing to do with the company's business. In that case, customers never know why the company spent that money for that behavior. And sometimes consumers may think that the company tried to simply use the firm's cash because the firm simply has a lot of cash. So a lot of companies actually spend simply money for nothing by locating themselves in case A and B. C case, very good. So people call like this category as a foolish company. Here, a very sly company, or bad or wicked company. Here, a very good company in stupid way. And company D here, they call a smart company. Like this one, we know that like a lot of companies simply anxious, enthusiastic for spending money for poor neighborhood, helping elderly people and so on, with very good-hearted intention, which is very good. But because of that money spending spree, the company may deteriorate the firm's, say, operation, for instance. In that case, that's not really a good idea for the firms. Good behavior, but not really smart. So the point here is your CSR activity should be like D here. Should do good for community, society, but also increase your profit simultaneously. Again, the question is how. So that is actually the concern. So most of the thing actually covered in this chapter is how then company can design a CSR strategy like here. How can we be a smart company, right? So before we talk about that one, just try to clarify first, what's the definition of CSR? What's the definition of C, corporate social citizenship, and so on? Right? Because I think the author of textbook is Carroll. I think he is one of the big guy in CSR studies. So he defined his own way. However, a lot many scholars actually define in their own different ways. So I just try to follow his way because we are simply using his textbook. So this is actually the definition, literally the definition of CSR, corporate social responsibility. A serious considering the impact of company's action on society. So the point here is considering, right? Not obligation. The manager should seriously consider that their decision-making, behavior, or any movement would impact the whole society in larger scale. You never forget that. So that's the definition of CSR long time ago. Not anymore. This day, if you look at like how that definition changed, more like a lawful or enforcement actually embedded in a new definition of CSR, right? Rather than simply you consider, nowadays CSR is actually required, right? So again, so corporate citizenship means we are here the citizens, right? So we know what our behavior should be. We know what is the thing that we shouldn't do and what is the thing that we should do, right? Just like that, company should know what is the thing should do, should not do. So responsibility simply means obligation and accountability. However, that narrow sense of responsibility getting wider and broader. So not only the recognizing the obligation, the company nowadays should act something on that obligation in positive way. So that's what I call a responsiveness. And after you act something on that responsibility, obligation things, you have to at the end measure whether your effect, whether your behavior bring back to your firms a positive effect. Right? If your behavior, again, good behavior never bring a positive effect to your firms, simply like financial performance, for instance, that's not the CSR, right? So good behavior should be connected with your a good financial purpose. So altogether, this concept, altogether we call a corporate citizenship. Right? So more corporate citizenship is more like comprehensive meaning containing corporate social responsibility. So this is like the logical circulation cycle of CSR, right? Where the concept of CSR created and what kind of result that CSR actually created, what kind of result actually generated, and that outcome actually create what kind of another requirement for CSR. So we've been already talking about a lot of societal involvement actually pushing companies or interpreting, viewing the companies in a very negative way. So without doing something, the company cannot really maintain their business. So that's how the company should do the CSR activity, corporate social responsibility, responsible activity. But the point here is that the criticism or argument here is that the more a firm doing good, some people say that the social gap, the social problem will be smaller, narrower, and at some point will disappear. But some other people say that the more company try to satisfy lots of stakeholders, the more the society as a whole together want more, which is like more increased expectation. So that is actually a dilemma of the firm, from the firm. So that's why anyway, the company's financial resource is quite limited. They just cannot give out what they have forever, right? So which means that the company cannot satisfy stakeholders' want and need forever. So that's why at some point you should think about your behavior should be related to your financial performance. Otherwise, you better stopping your CSR activity as far as the activity is nothing to do with your company's good performance. So I think it is very interesting to go over the history of CSR. So where the ideas of CSR are created and how it is progressed and where we are now. So I think going through that history will be also very interesting and fun to follow. You may think that the CSR, corporate social responsibility, is kind of a very concept created in modern times. However, it is not, right? You guys know Adam Smith. Who is he? Invisible hand. What is invisible hand? Okay, so I think the Adam Smith already talked about CSR in his argument of invisible hand. So, but his CSR ideas is quite different from what we now saying CSR. His CSR is just as he said, the customers has a lot of wants and needs, right? And suppliers, here supplier try to satisfy what they want and what they need, right? Unless the market is not, unless the market don't interrupt it or intervene, then the suppliers try to do their best to satisfy these customers. So the winner will be somebody, some supplier here who provide the best product, the best service at lowest price. Right? So for that mechanism, nobody should talk about anything. No intervention. Right? Right? So the effort to be the winner as a supplier here is already CSR. Try to provide the maximum satisfaction for the customers. That is already a CSR concept, right? Providing the greatest happiness to the customers. That's the CSR. Exactly, right? That's the good things, right? So actually, that is actually starting point of a CSR. So until somewhere like 1930, you will briefly learn the management history in your IBA class in fall semester. So I will talk about this one again. But up until 1930s, especially in USA and Western Europe, the belief on the market at the time is no intervention, laissez-faire, free market is a good thing, a good behavior, right? Unlimited competition is a good thing. So CSR is providing the maximum happiness to the customers. So that was actually pretty much what economic model of CSR. However, as you see, as time goes, that concept keeps changing, like from economic model to legal model and social model. Social model is more like sustainable management model, right? Stakeholder model, right? However, you should not underestimate the economic model for the CSR, because even if in that time, at the time, like up until 1930s, a lot of companies actually compete severely to provide the, like, what you call a maximum happiness, maximum satisfaction for the customers at lower price, believing that that is a good things and good behavior. But apart from that, the firms also did a very kind of or different kinds of also, as we see here, a good behavior, like philanthropic behavior, paternalism, community obligations. Like we see a lot of YMCA, for instance. That huge organization is kind of organization that helping community. Philanthropic ideas, like a lot of like rich men, especially in USA, like Henry Ford, or a lot of rich men at the time donate huge amount of money to society, build huge, very larger scale of foundations. So this is actually the ideas of a philanthropic. And also, as you see from our textbook here, like city of Detroit, and a lot of like city in mid USA is kind of an industrial cluster, right? So intentionally, the entrepreneur at the time in USA built specific area as kind of a industrial community by choosing that particular site of as like industrial cluster. It not only help out the company's operation, but also help a lot of community at the time. So the point again, you should not always criticize the economic approach to the CSR, but also because the economic model of CSR actually did a lot of other good behavior. So receiving a lot of criticism this day of the economic model of CSR, but you should not underestimate what it actually has done. Who is actually number one CSR entrepreneur, if you name? I think you already have learn this one, this figure of Korea. 정주영 회장, right? Yeah, of course, a very good leader of our industry, and he did a lot of CSR activity. But actually, even he was born, or when he was actually a kid, we already have a very good CSR guru already. A kind of a social entrepreneur in Korea. Actually, this is the founder of Yuan Yangheng, right? What is Yuan Yangheng? This is actually President Park giving him like a prize for doing good things for the whole society. What is Yuan Yangheng? That's Yuan Kimberly, right? Medicine company, like making medicine drug for curing people, right? So don't get confused here. Yuan Kimberly is like joint venture company in Korea, right? Korean company and USA tissue maker form together, make the company. That's Yuan Kimberly. And Yuan Yangheng is like a drug company, like making a lot of medicine. So why he still praised a lot as a #1 CSR figure in Korea? What he actually did? A lot of good things, right? Actually, he helped out the. Just remember the graph here, right? He did very good things for the community and society in Korea, especially in time somewhere in 1920 to 30s, the time when Korea was under the colonial time, under the Japanese control, right? So very harsh and tough time. So what he did was actually his CSR activity was more like type B here, doing a very good thing for the whole country, for whole poor people of Korea, but at the same time in very systematic way. Considering the time here, I think his idea was really foresight and quite brilliant, right? He found what I call a foundation, right? 재단, right? Not really like money spree to money spending party to poor people, but he just established a scholarship foundation, a lot of good foundation, and by the establishment of this foundation, he was just helping poor people. I mean, at that time, especially, like a lot of Korean medicine firm made what I call a pain relieving medicine, which is quite good for profit, right? Pain relieving pill and so on. So at the time, it was much more lucrative part of the ideas. But what Yuan Yangheng and Dr. Yu Il-han did was that rather than producing pain reliever, what he did was producing like household medicines, right? Which is very fundamental for your daily emergency situation, right? Not really profitable, but actually he keep on doing that one. And also he spent a lot of money for R&D to catch up the Japanese drugstore medicine company, and actually he did. And after he earned a lot of money and he transferred all of his ownership to his partner, and then in return he built a kind of his own foundation. So foundation is like a public companies, like, so by having foundation, the foundation has a kind of a model for helping poor people on a very continual basis, rather than just one or a few times of helping out a poor community in Korea. So he's actually number one CSR figure in Korean modern history. Of course, Jung Ji-young and other Korean leading businessmen also conducted a lot of CSR activity as well. Okay, after the break, we are going to talk about what are the, like, before we talk about some more, what are the good example of CSR activity and what industry are particularly more concerned about CSR activities. And sometimes some industry really simply don't need to concern much about it, but they are anxious for it. And we try to see why. So we see some example. Okay. Lots of companies this stage very, as I told you before, this day very enthusiastic for doing CSR activity. But if you look at like fashion industry, for instance, you may be wondering why these firms are so crazy about doing CSR. Like as you see here, H&M or Uniqlo, for instance, one of the very leading companies in the CSR activities. Do you know why? Why these firms are, why they are so crazy about this CSR? Like some industry like automobile industry or chemical industry or some of like the industry, environmental sensitive ones like oil company, for instance. I know that obviously they should do good in CSR good way, but what about these clothing companies? Uniqlo or H&M? Well, yeah.
About H&M, there has been a lot of criticism about the countries where the clothes are made of.
Exactly.
China or Bangladesh.
Exactly. They do provide really good things. They basically provide very cheap clothes, very good, high quality clothes. But because of that, things actually increase some kind of suspicion of other, right? Like wondering, are these firms like H&M or Uniqlo abusing like labor from less developed country? Or are these firms like using very contaminated, a very cheap material for clothing? So that kind of suspicion actually would be the worry of the H&M or Uniqlo. So that's why these firms, what you call a SPA, specialty store for private label apparel, spend a lot of money and try to create a lot of brilliant creative ideas of their CSR, especially in the sense SPA group, clothing companies, H&M, their CSR activity is really kind of a very landmark example of other companies. Of course, if you see like management philosophy of the H&M founder, he said that we should provide clothes for even like penniless people, very poor people. So our product should be suitable for that poor people. Not only like average, normal, ordinary people, but also very low class, what I call it, very poor people. So his management philosophy already a CSR centered and oriented one. And also H&M is a Swedish company, right? So those countries is pretty much emphasizing regulationally and institutionally emphasizing the CSR activity. Unlike other countries, like the government of Sweden actually keep traveling around the world and keep watching how the Swedish global firms are doing in terms of CSR. So if Swedish firms not doing good, then that the monitoring governors or administrator just sense that wrongdoing and just report to the central government of Sweden, and the company may pay very huge fine. So the country itself already very CSR-oriented country. But other than that, I should say, to prevent a lot of suspicions from the market, anyway, the H&M should do the CSR activities. I think in terms of the H&M's real CSR activities, pretty much amazing. It's much more like oil companies if you look at the CSR of the H&M. I mean, just like all of the SPA firms, if you bring that SPA product back to the store, then they give you some kind of a voucher. Like SPA, the H&M case, if you buy, say, I mean, Uniqlo as well, if you bring your used Uniqlo clothes back to the shop, then probably the shop may give you some kind of a discount voucher. Very typical CSR activity, right? So by collecting that, what I call a waste cloth, they just distribute back to the people in less developed country and so on. So that is pretty much practical, very common practice. But H&M case, they collect all of the waste clothes and they just classify them into very different categories. Like category 1 would be like resale item. So that resale item would be able to sell back to, say, kind of a less developed country, which means that this item in that group could be like the condition of the clothes, collected clothes would be pretty much good. And the other one is number 2 group here is kind of a recycle group. So probably the waste clothes can be recycled to the making another clothes and so on. And the third group is if the condition of collected item is so poor, then it can be used as a raw materials for using some other purpose. And the last one, even the worst condition of the collected item of the clothes can be used for energy creation, energy resource. Right. None of other SPA group actually doing their CSR in that kind of a refined way. So pretty much systematic and designed CSR activities. So this is written in Korea. So somebody please translate this one. So in the past, customers just buy if the price is right or relatively cheap. But this day, the customer don't buy that price. Right? Cheap price is not the reason to buy. If the price is so cheap, then customer may ask why. Right? That's why a lot of customers just stay concerned about the cheap price. If it is cheap, the product is cheap because something wrong in that product by, say, simply by using labor abuse in poor countries or by using a contaminated or less environmental friendly materials and so on. So to eradicate that kind of suspicion, the H&M should do CSR to get rid of that suspicion from the market. So this is actually H&M's. That's why I'm not sure. I know probably I don't know how many of you guys here like the H&M. Is it really good? Yeah, better than Uniqlo, one of my favorite, right? Really? Is male clothing also they sell? Yeah, it's good. But according to my analysis, customers buy H&M not because the product itself really superior design-wise, because of the like management philosophy, CSR philosophy of this kind. So that's why customers keep buying and buying. So that's how customer this day has the view on the concept of the SPA. Not all of us here buy the SPA product because they are offering cheap one, but because some of the SPA providing something based on this very good management CSR philosophy. Like Uniqlo as well, not really refined way of CSR activity of the H&M, but Uniqlo again in terms of donation size to say refugees, for instance. I think the Uniqlo is truly on the lead of all other SPA group. What about like the broadcasting, like home shopping? I'm sorry, the data here in Korean because I just quoted from the newspaper, right? So, which means that not on the exam, but I just put this one on as for your reference. A lot of home shopping companies like GS Shop, Hyundai Home Shopping, Lotte Home Shopping, and GS All Shopping. All these leading Korean shopping, home shopping, like internet shopping, companies also doing a lot of CSR because these companies also try to calm down the suspicion from the customers. The revenue of these firms are so huge this day. I think many of us here buy the product through them, not really going to the department store. So this is how actually this internet shopping, home shopping firms actually doing the spending money for their CSRs. Like CJ case here, their specialty is like giving free lunchbox for poor kids. And GS case here, their job is collaborating with the Save the Children and do something for the saving the life of the newborn babies. And Lotte case means that when you buy something from Lotte home shopping, then your money, like 1 or 2% of your payment actually go directly to the donation account. So that's how they do that. So they are very pretty much creative in their own CSR strategy. So for those of you who are very concerned about, say, poor kids, certainly you guys may be buying something from the GS shop, for instance. So good things should be done smartly. Not only in good way, but also in smart way. So that actually is the point. So again, after 1950s, I think the according to the CSR studies, also in management studies, 1950 is kind of a momentum era because it is actually the time when the democracy actually come down to the working environment. So even in the company, the movement of democracy become pretty much prevalent and become widespread in a lot of actually. The CSR in 1950 was actually pretty much much more focused on the welfare of the employees. Before 1950 or 40s, the working condition in the global firms were pretty much horrible. Like your average working hour per day, what is like minimum working hour, like maximum working, like average working hour in Korea per day? 8? 9? I'm pretty much sure, yeah, 8, probably 9. So if you work more, I think you will get extra pay. Probably. But at the time, somewhere in 30s, 40s, I think the 16 hours or 18 hours of working per day is pretty much common. So considering those kind of poor working condition get over it, by the time of 1950s and somewhere then. So CSR at the time become much more focused on the welfare of the employees. So as time passes, the meaning of CSR getting broader, wider, and that's where we are now. So next Friday we will talk more about the meaning of CSR and what are the criticism of the CSR. Somebody still say that because of the CSR is very short-term looking strategy. So in the longer term, CSR is never contributing to anyone. So somebody say so. Even the Nobel Prize winner like Friedman say that CSR is just nothing but just bullshit, right? I'm sorry, bad language in front of the camera, right? Not like creating profit. That's it. You can do more than that. So that's actually the his argument. But some other guys, scholars say that we have to do more to CSR in a very creative way. So we are going to talk about that one. And also we are going to talk about how different academic approaches actually went through the ideas of CSR. Okay, that's it. And any question? I didn't send you out the reading material yet, but please be ready. Okay, I know that you. So. Any question? I didn't check the attendance today because I was a little bit, I didn't bring the one. But I will check the attendance certainly on Friday.